2nd, 2021 Ways and Means Committee meeting. Please, roll call.
Chairwoman Sims.
Here.
Alderman Gould.
Here.
Alderman Shelton.
Here.
Alderwoman Tice. Here. All members present.
Great. Item 2 on the agenda is approval or amendment of the agenda. Are there any adjustments that anyone would like to propose be made? Any objection to approving by acclamation? All right, seeing none, that'll be approved. Item number 3, there are no announcements, appointments, or proclamations and recognitions. We'll move on to item number 4. Item number 4 is report of committee chair and alderman. I have no report. Alderman Gould.
No report.
Alderman Shelton.
No report.
Alderwoman Parker Tice.
No report.
Item number 5 is the city administrator's report. 5A is the 2022 annual budget process and tentative calendar. Other than, Bola, do you have something to weigh in other than to generally, I think we've had the approach that we did last year. I hope we can do this budget process in 2 meetings, but I like to have them scheduled and we can cancel. So did everyone have an opportunity to look at the special meetings that are being proposed, in particular October 28th and November 18th. Otherwise, the other meetings are just the regularly scheduled meetings. As we sit here tonight, does anyone have any, are you all available at that time? Okay, so I propose that we put those on the calendar. The dates seem to be good. And again, like if we get through it before, we won't have them. But they're
We have a meeting scheduled for the 28th already, right?
right. So what is listed, the October 7th and November 4th and December 2nd are all of our regularly scheduled meetings, which happen on the first Thursday of the month. What is being folded in are the 2 special meetings, one being October 28th and the other one being November 18th, all starting at 5:30. So,
Okay.
so those will be
That's
the
what I
new
thought.
meetings.
That's what I
And if
Yeah.
we're able to get through it without having all 5 of those meetings, that's wonderful. But that'll be sort of our tentative schedule. Am I leaving anything out on that one?
No, you're not.
And then we just defer to you in terms of organizing topics that will fit, into those meetings. I know not all of them are created equal, some of maybe the less, I don't even want to say controversial, the less interesting, the more perfunctory ones can be grouped together, and then the ones that may require more attention, but I'll just rely on you to kind of fix that schedule. So that'll be great. All right. Well, thank you. Let's see. Item number 5B is the 2022 annual budget process, citizen budget forum. Is this just an opportunity to invite people to come and speak?
That's right.
Do I have to gavel in anybody? Is this a
No.
formal?
Kelly, is there anybody on Zoom?
We have no one who has raised their hand and wants to speak.
Okay. Well, just the public forum was for people to share ideas and priorities for consideration during the budget preparation process. As compelling of a topic as we all find it, apparently there's no one in the gallery that wants to come forward. So we'll open and close that one. 5C is update on the American Rescue Plan Act. Who's leading us off on that
The
one?
city has received half of the funds that we are expecting. And I just thought that before the city would decide, or the board would decide how they want to spend the funds, $803,000 approximately, we could invest it. And I just got off the phone with Brad Lukens, the city's investment manager. He did say that he is hearing from other municipalities, municipalities primarily that he helps, asking where they can invest it. And so 90 days or through the end of the year is really not a long time. We can certainly put it in CDs. I just thought that the committee might want to weigh in on, instead of just parking it in our account, we could invest it in a CD, and you can decide what the duration would be.
Any thoughts on that? Alderman Gould?
I mean, it does seem like a very short window.
It is.
What would be the fees? Because I would figure
Yeah,
the cost that we pay to invest, and with that short of a window, the return that we'd get,
it's
pretty
minimal,
minimal.
minimal. It
And-
probably could possibly wipe out the fees. He did some calculation for me, and for all of it, I think we could possibly generate $500 if it's 60, 90 days. I just don't know what the deliberation will be for the board to start to spend the money.
Right, yeah, I mean, that would be my question is, until we really know how we want to spend it, it seems like we'd want to keep it, available and not tie it up.
Sure.
But that's my perspective.
What's our timeline to have to spend it? Is there one?
2026,
Okay. Yeah,
December 31st, 2026.
a CD is gonna wipe itself out with the fees right now anyway, but that's my opinion. I'd rather have it sitting there available.
I can't see us spending us by the end of the year, but it's probably not worth the fees and for the amount of revenue. If the revenue's $500 and then we haven't talked about fees, it's probably not worth the effort of doing it.
Yeah, to me, it would seem the brain power that would have to be applied to decide in the city would cost more than $500. So, I mean, my thoughts are we'd park it in an account until we decide what it is we want to do with it. Maybe we revisit down the road. Do you need a motion
No,
from
that's
us
it.
on that, or
No.
okay? And it's just my read on this particular line item, or project still being sort of formulated as to what to do with the money, so that's kind of a work in progress.
Right, I'm trying to formulate the list in a template that has been given to everyone, that references the interim rule. So once we update that, and if you remember, some of the projects did not have a cost. So I've asked department directors to provide us with a cost, Robin and I, and better narrative, because they do ask for that. For instance, they ask for the project name, the category, reference it to the interim rule, how much you're spending and what year you're spending. And this is part of their audit trail, because I want to say maybe October 31st, our first report is due. And then thereafter, it's an annual report that we have to submit. So I just thought it'd be better to have it in that format, save a little work. So I hope to have that for you here soon.
Okay, great. Anything else on that
No,
topic?
that's
We're
it.
good? Okay, all right, so we'll move on. Item 6A, the use tax notice.
Kevin O'Keefe and his firm, Curtis Hines O'Keefe, helped the city draft a public notice that we are required to post for 2 consecutive weeks in a widely read paper of general circulation, and on the city's website through the end of the year. So that is in this packet for the meeting. The cost of them doing that for us, because we're sharing this with 14 other cities, is about $96. So Janet's already posted it on the city's website. The ad has started running, and we've posted it in all other city buildings. So we are now in compliance with that law.
Compliance is good. Okay, we'll move on. Item 6B is the fiscal year 2020 audit update. Who's got that?
So we are still working on the audit. And in board docs, if you have not refreshed your meeting packet, I would recommend that you do. In administrative section, I posted an email response that we received. Robin asked from Rana. If you remember, Rana's the consultant who's helping us with the audit, and she indicates that she has new information pertinent to the audit. She hopes to have the schedules forwarded to them by next Thursday, September 9th. One of the challenges she's faced, she says, in preparing the audit schedules has been the lack of training with our new software. So apparently, those who work with it aren't that familiar with it. And so we've had meetings, multiple meetings, Robin has, with Blackbaud. They're the software vendor. So we're getting more and more people trained. But this will allow the auditors, once they have this, to start their process. And you know, they've told us it will take at least a minimum of 60, 90 days for them to complete it. And this also gives Rana an opportunity to start to work on the statistical section of the audit, which is, you know, all the data in the back, and what she's also calling our capital assets. So it's still a work in progress. However, with Robin and Gina, I'm assured that we will not be going through this next year.
Any questions? Okay.
So when do
Nancy?
we anticipate it being, like, what's
So if it's
Rana's
60
timeline, and then it's 60 to 90 days after
After
that?
that.
So what's the timing of when we think we'll have our audit?
It might be toward the end of the year.
But we think it'll be this calendar year?
Yes.
Thank
I'm pushing for that. It's been long enough, so.
Okay. All right, 6C is a public hearing on setting the property tax rates.
Robin will present the property tax rate.
Just make sure that the mic, is her microphone on? Okay, yep.
Okay, great. Thanks so much. Good evening. We have worked to get this completed. It was a little bit different this year because of the Blankenship decision from the state auditor's office. So the assessed values that we came up with for general fund, library, and pension are $323,003, $902,781, and $1,173,899. And these numbers will be budgeted accordingly for 2022. What we ended up formulating from our calculations is that there are some increases for residential, commercial, and personal property for 2020. Are there any questions?
Alderman Gould?
Can you explain what's driving the increases?
It's a reassessment based upon the Blankenship decision. So some of the rates were adjusted specifically for the library.
And is it just normal procedure to adjust it, or is there any times that we decide not to adjust it?
No, you know, per state law, every odd year is a reassessment throughout St. Louis County. And this is a reassessment year. So if you were lucky enough to get a note from the assessor's office that they came by your house and took a look, and if you want them to come inside, you know, they send you, in that note, there's a contact information to call them so that they can come, because you're thinking you're gonna protest it. So most values of homes went up this year, and that tends to happen during a reassessment year unless you have a significant downturn in the economy, as we did in 2008. So that's why you're seeing general increase in the assessed value across the board, and then you do a calculation on what the tax rate is. And because of the Blankenship opinion, I think we included that in board docs. And we believe that applies primarily to the library, not necessarily the city general or pension. We have no debt. But overall, if you look at the total revenue, that is going up compared to 2020. Yes.
So how does this impact our citizens and our businesses? Not significantly, or is it, you said it impacts
It-
mostly the library?
Well, it might. So if your assessed value is going up, and there's a calculation on what your property tax rate, your real estate tax rate will be, I don't know that anyone necessarily, meaning the taxing districts in our region, are increasing their tax rate, but they could see somewhat of an increase, yeah, in the amount of taxes they would have to pay back. It could impact them, but it depends on what the value of their homes are. I know personally, I've seen mine go up.
Mine went
Yeah,
up,
yeah.
So,
I think there are a lot of citizens that are upset about, that, and happy that we don't necessarily adjust or necessarily have property taxes like some of the other municipalities.
right. So, our residents are still paying, even though they might not be paying general residential, they are paying to the library, and they are paying to the pension board. So, but for the most part, they're paying to other taxing entities, not the city, meaning the school district.
I'm sorry, are there any other questions? Is there a motion or something that you need from us, or?
Right, motion, so we've already placed the public hearing in the county, and so we would have a public hearing and a first reading at the meeting on the 7th, and a second reading at the meeting on the 20th. Of course, this is all pre-Board of Equalization, so once all the protesting matters been resolved, we'll see changes, if there are any, and hopefully it's in time with the meeting on the 20th so that we can have the second reading. If not, in the past, we've had special meetings just for that. So we'll be talking to the mayor and the board. Hopefully, if we don't have to have one, it'll just go forward on the 20th.
Okay, well, I guess at this point, I'd entertain a motion to approve the proposed 2021 property tax rates, that they be submitted to the full Board of Aldermen for review and approval, inclusive of any related required public hearings.
I'll make that motion.
Second.
All right, there's been a motion by Alderwoman Tice and a second by Alderman Shelton. Any discussion? All right, roll call.
Sorry. Chairwoman Sims,
Yes.
Alderman Gould,
Yes.
Alderman Shelton.
Yes.
Alderwoman Tice.
Yes.
Okay, a motion carries.
Okay, moving along. Item 6D is the 2022 proposed budget presentation on revenue projections. Who
We
is
think
leading?
this is the most fun part of the meeting.
Tell us all about the money.
So I apologize, we took another look at these numbers and sent out revisions, revised revenue projections for you. If you refresh, you'll find it there. I hope you can see or read the print. The fonts are somewhat tiny, but Robin will explain the line items, revenue line items, where we are seeing the most changes, and of course, the questions that you all have.
Good evening again, sorry. I apologize that you're just seeing this, but I wanted to spend some more time to make sure that we had it correct. I know from what I've learned so far, being with the city of Brentwood, we will go through this a few more times before it's finalized, so this is very preliminary, and it's my first attempt. So I apologize that you're just getting it. So one of the things I wanted to do was give you some notes on the side, comments from some of the major revenue lines, and also those that show either a higher increase or decrease. We met with the department heads and discussed this with them so that we could have a collaborative effort. Everything that is under, to the left in the yellow, those numbers have changed throughout the spreadsheet. So I want to talk about the state motor fuel tax. Starting in 2022, there's a new 12.5-cent motor fuel tax that will be phased in over 5 years. So we have included that in our projection for 2022, which would be the reason for the 42% increase in that line item. For the utility tax, liquid gas, we haven't had any brutally cold winter months, so that could explain why those revenues are down. Same thing for electricity, which is down about 11%. Even though we've had some unbearable heat this summer, it hasn't been consistently warm and, over 100 degrees for long periods of time, so that could account for that decrease in utility for Union Electric. There is a major decrease for Cablevision. I recall the first time that I attended Ways and Means, we discussed this, but we're steadily declining due to other avenues that people use to watch TV and be entertained, such as streaming services such as Netflix, Amazon, Fire Stick, Hulu. I've heard of a number of them, and Sling. There's a number of them out there. Lower cost alternatives and ways for people to stream even from their smartphones. So, and I also think that because businesses have opened up in comparison with this time last year, people aren't just sitting at home, so they're able to get out and do things, and they can watch TV from their smartphones if they choose to. The next line item is occupational licenses. We're not expecting an increase or decrease from prior years. Liquor licenses are down about 12%. Between last year and this year, we've had a total of 7 businesses that sell liquor that either went out of business or did not renew their licenses. Occupancy permits, down. People aren't moving as much during the pandemic. Building permits are down 10%. The expectation is, the reason for that, I apologize, is because we don't expect much movement with people as the construction season starts to slow and the winter months start to occur in the next few months. Same thing with planning and zoning applications. We're expecting that line item to return to the pre-pandemic trend. Same with the electrical and plumbing permits. And yes, for electrical and plumbing, we're expecting a slight increase based upon the fiscal year 20 revenues. We exceeded the budget on both of those line items. sorry. Trash pickups, etc. There have been fluctuations with the number of citizens requesting this service. There isn't a steady trend from what I can see, but right now we're down about 12% with our expectation for revenues. Ambulance fees, the revenue from ambulance fees remain steady with no expected increase or decrease. Intercity joint services, that's our contract with Brentwood School District to provide a student resource officer. We had some billing issues where we weren't billing according to schedule. Those matters have been resolved and billing is up to date. So we're expecting those revenues to come in, which is the reason for the increase. Sale of city property, we're up 67%. The revenues have exceeded the budget so far this year. Interest income is down. Short-term rates remain at either 0 or above 1%. We received a $5,000 donation from the Optimist Club of Brentwood to be used over 5 years at $1,000 each. Still, that line item is down 21%. The slate premium return, we received a surplus distribution of $85,000. So that's the reason for that large increase. Moving into the capital, well, let me stop and pause right there. That was general revenue. Are there any questions regarding general revenue projections?
I had a question on line item, I guess it sees property, which is 10-100-4416. Do we just no longer, do we not do that anymore?
We do not do that anymore.
Okay. And on the slate premium return, we're gonna still continue with budgeting a refund in premiums?
Yes, we just got notice today, we're getting a check.
Okay.
And Jason had shared this with the board back in April.
So we think that that'll continue to
Yes,
trend?
yes.
Okay. Does anyone have other questions? Alderman Gould?
I've got a question about our favorite Cablevision trend. I mean, wouldn't it make more sense to budget that down for our future years? Because we know that trend is just going to continue. Or how do we replace that revenue with, are there other internet streaming types of, revenue opportunities? Because that's just going to be continuing the trend. Cablevision is
Yeah, that would be a
dying.
lawsuit that the municipalities would jointly hire legal counsel to, and also go to Jeff City to
Yeah.
advocate for a way to get some of that. So it's a joint effort, it's not anything that any
understood.
one community would do.
So-
But to what you say, so, if you look at the budget for '21, it was 115, and we're budgeting 59,000, how much is that? I can't read. What are we budgeting in
59,559.
59,559.
So it is coming down. Would you like to lower it even further?
Well, I mean, but when you look at projected for 2023 and 2024, I'm just saying,
Yeah.
seems like we should probably start to look at the trend line of since 2016 to
Yeah.
now, and I would just say, let's keep that anticipated. So we're
agree.
not looking at,
We agree.
negative numbers in our budgeting. 'cause,
What number would you suggest there?
well, I'd have to do the math, I guess, but.
Oh, and we can play around
Yeah,
with
you
it
guys-
and just lower that and
Yeah.
bring this back later.
I would even suggest lowering. I would even suggest lowering the anticipated number this year. It's not going to go up from what we're looking at collecting. It's small dollars, but
Okay.
I mean, then we don't have a variance later, but like, if we're looking at collecting just shy of 59, we're not gonna collect 59.5 next year, there's just no way, so.
No, you're right.
um,
How about we lower it to maybe 47,000?
Sure.
Okay.
Yeah.
Any other questions? Okay, want to go on to the next section?
The next section is capital improvement funds. Excuse me. The major item in this section would be the sale of city property. Recently, we sold the 2004 ambulance via Gov Deals, and that netted us $15,650. I don't really expect any more major sales of properties, city property this fiscal year. It just depends on what's needed and what's planned, but we're starting to trend down, but that was good that we were able to sell that ambulance and make pretty good profit. The next item again is interest income. Short-term rates remain at 0 or above 1%. That is the conclusion unless there are any questions for me.
I guess just generally, regarding sales tax, and that might also be in part of the general fund revenues too. How are we characterizing our sales tax? Would you say we're being conservative? Are we trending up? That's our bread and butter.
I think we're being conservative. If you look at sales tax and general fund, you'll see a 1%. Let me make sure I'm looking at the right line. A negative 1.23% there. If you compare that to capital, and so it all depends. Capital, you see a 3.58. It just really depends on what percentage of that the city gets to keep. And page 21 of the budget book talks about, for instance, fire sales tax, the half-cent sales tax, the city keeps 100% of that. Stormwater park sales tax, which is a quarter-cent sales tax, the city keeps 100% of that. Capital, we share 15% and keep 85%. And then local option sales tax. So even though you remember during COVID last year, and we had all the cost containment, and there was a projection that we would see greater decline in sales tax, and we didn't really see that. So I think the city continues to be well-positioned, that what people continue to buy, we have those stores in our community. And in board docs, there is a table that we've provided for you. This comes from Cook and Riley. If you remember, the city has an agreement with Cook and Riley to look at all the city's sales tax, particularly to make sure that retailers are paying taxes to the community where they're located, and they're not accidentally paying it to another community. So, we still have instances where that's going on, but then that's the value of having Cook and Riley. But if you do a comparison of how we're performing, same time last year, we're doing better. You look at economic development sales tax, we collected enough to be able to pay the debt and have a little over. We're trending even better this year, but instead of just budgeting the 3.2 million that all our consultants said we could hope to collect, I think we're being very conservative and budgeting what looks like it's more in line with what comes in. You also look at use tax. We're doing better than what we budgeted, and we knew and we had heard anecdotal stories that that would happen. So it's great to actually see that that is occurring. So bottom line, you look at the total revenue for the entire city, it's gone up for 2022. But that's not because sales tax is just great. That's because we have the American Rescue Plan Act, 803,000 coming this year, another 803,000 coming next year. But then we also have the CARES Act money. We got half of what, 276 last year, another 276 this year. We haven't really spent all of it, so most of it is just rolling into fund balance until there's a need to spend that. So generally, I think the city continues to be well-placed because of the type of businesses that we have. So as we go forward, we keep this in mind. As departments start to work on their budget and present that, we know just from having discussions that there will be a number of new positions that are being requested. So departments are providing, or they're doing their due diligence and providing data to support the need for those positions. So I think the board has not made a decision to spend any of the use tax. So the 295,000 that we budgeted this year, it still stays in the budget intact. However, next year is an opportunity to continue to have discussion on how those funds will be spent.
So is it fair to say that, that, you know, we're in good shape from a sales tax perspective, but yet
Yes.
we are still being conservative with our projections to
Absolutely.
be able to, you know, absorb changes that may come down the road, but right, so far we're in good shape.
That's right, because I think I read in the paper this week that airlines for the fourth quarter have decreased the number of flights. So that leads me to conclude that there might be another variant coming, or there could be changes, you know, coming that probably take us back. But yes, we are being very conservative. And this board always has an opportunity, if we see how things are going, to hit the pause button and do another cost containment and revise all our projections. And we have, like Robin said, an opportunity to do that before the budget's adopted.
Thank you.
Thank
Wanna
you.
Continue on down the road on your spreadsheet.
Oh, I kind of did the economic development and the stormwater, and there's
Yes,
no
you
change
did.
in sewer lateral, so I
Right.
kind of wrapped it up.
And Bola mentioned the use tax, which is new for this budget year for us, and we're doing very well with that. Are there any questions? Thanks so
I think
much.
so, thank you very much. Yeah, that's always the fun part of the budget process.
Nicely done on your
Much
first
we're
one.
making. Yes. All right, so thank you very much. We'll move on. Item 7 is the consent agenda. The only item are the approval of the minutes from the June 3rd and May 6th Ways and Means Committee meetings. Have you all had the opportunity to review those minutes? Any objection to approving the consent agenda by acclamation, inclusive of the minutes? All right, it'll stand approved. Item 8, old business. 8A is the mandatory vaccination for the city of Brentwood. Who's leading us with that?
Jason?
At an earlier meeting this year, the committee had asked that a policy be developed that would be rolled out for our staff that would indicate a mandatory vaccine policy for all of the Brentwood employees. And what you see in front of you is what Hayes, or excuse me, not Hayes, our legal counsel had put together for us. It is a two-phased policy. The first phase would be that for managerial employees. The easy way to think of it, for the most part, would be the exempt employees versus the non-exempt employees. There are a few that kind of cross the boundary there. The implementation for that would then take effect as of December 1st. For the rank and file employees, then it would be a month following that. Part of the reason for a slight delay in that is when this goes to the full board for them to vote, we want to make sure there's plenty of opportunity for our employees to actually go out and get the vaccine, or if they wish to try to get an exemption from the policy based on religious or medical reasoning, that they've got the time and the opportunity to do that. It should be noted across the board, as indicated in the memo, we are fully vaccinated for our administrative staff at City Hall, which includes finance and the remainder of the administrative staff. Our police department is the one that is probably the least vaccinated of the full-time staff. We're sitting at about 66%, which equates to between 8 and 9 employees. Most of the employees that have not received the vaccine to date are pretty adamant about their stance. So the only thing that I would put forth to the committee and then ultimately to the board is, if this policy is enacted, there will more than likely be terminations that would come from that. And as long as the board is comfortable with that, then they can proceed as they see fit. But there are some employees that will take a stand on this.
Are there any questions? Alderman Gould?
Yeah, I mean, you bring up an issue that I think is something that we need to consider. I mean, I don't know that, I guess I want to see some data on whether or not the unvaccinated and, lack of vaccinations in the department is causing a significant issue. Because I think the last time we took this up, it was still really early. We didn't know a whole lot. Some of the fire department folks asked to reconsider, and so I think we've had time to consider it, and we've looked at a lot of the where things are going. I think that it's early in the approval that we need to see how, as Bolo mentioned, there's possibly some variants coming. That my concern is that if we implement this and then things change, what does that mean? And if the vaccine now, as the Pfizer CEO has even said, a new variant comes on, we've got 95 days to come up with another one. So what does that do for administration purposes? Who is now going to be responsible for checking everybody, making sure, because everybody's on different timelines. So, 1 week somebody might be up for a booster and the next week somebody isn't. What does that do for our staffing? I just think I'd like to know if all of the other municipalities around us are doing the same, or are we, what's the reason for doing this?
There are some municipalities that have already put forth this type of a policy. Webster Groves was one of the first to enact it, one of our neighboring municipalities, and then the city of St. Louis has also done this. There have been a couple of others in recent weeks that have more or less following the Pfizer vaccine getting the full FDA approval. We're pushing forward with it at that point. I've participated in several webinars with regards to this type of a process, and many of the concerns that individuals have raised are not necessarily those that fall under the categories that would allow them an exemption. In other words, for religious purposes or for health purposes. Most of the individuals, I hesitate to call it political, but it tends to go more with personal choice, is what I hear more often than not from our employees. To your earlier question as to has it impacted us, as of yet, not really. But I do want to caution the board in that as of yesterday, what had happened before, and let me see if I can explain this so that it makes more sense. Early on in the process, if a first responder came down with COVID, it was automatically deemed to be work-related. Regardless. And so we had a number of our employee populace within that group of individuals come down with COVID, and so it was covered as a workers' compensation injury. That protection more or less went away as of yesterday. And what is going to have to happen going forward would be if an individual receives or it comes down as a positive COVID case, in order for it to be deemed to be work-related, it would have to tie to a specific incident. Now, our fire department has been very diligent in documenting all the cases thus far regardless. Even though they didn't necessarily have to do that, kudos to Ronnie and his staff in indicating in each of the cases where it presented itself in the fire department, it did tie back to a specific call that they had gone on. So I don't necessarily anticipate that being a problem for the fire department. Again, we only have 2 individuals there. The concern I would have would be on the police department side. It's much more difficult for those individuals to tie it to a specific call, primarily because of the nature of what they do, whether it's a traffic stop or something like that. They may not necessarily know if and when they come into contact with an individual. So that protection being gone, the protection that they would have would be getting the vaccine. So at this point, I kind of turn it back to the board and the committee and look for guidance as to whether or not you wish this to be pushed forward. If you want it to be delayed, it could certainly be delayed. If you want additional information, it could certainly, we could certainly go and try to get additional information and see what other municipalities are doing. But at the time I wrote this, it had just been announced that they were going to do it in Webster Groves. They've since enacted it, and again, the city of St. Louis has come forward and announced that as well.
Alderwoman Tice.
Maryland Heights has approved this as well. So I would like to see this push forward. I feel like we are a municipality, we're a public entity, citizens either are able to come in the building, like we want citizens to feel safe coming in the building, having a paramedic come in their house when they're having a health incident, when they interact with police. I would like to see this move forward. I think my other sort of long-term financial question is, have we seen insurance impacts on this? I know like Delta Airlines is now, I'm not proposing that we do this, so, but, but Delta Airlines is charging non-vaccinated employees $200 a month because of the increased hit they think it's going to have on their health insurance. So have we seen, and again, I'm not proposing that we do that, but have we seen any changes in our health insurance because of the cost of COVID, especially now after the changes that, from yesterday?
I think we won't see it probably. We did see some
We
increase,
saw
but
some with Slate. They kind of announced their numbers, and they indicated that COVID-related costs were basically the number 3 related costs behind spinal
Claims.
injuries and cancer,
Right.
which is, again, more or less what to be expected. But I should point out that on the workers' comp side, the city of Brentwood actually had one of the highest cost claims for COVID with one of our firefighters. He has gratefully subsequently recovered, so at least he's back on his feet with regards to that, but it can be definitely an impact. What I would suggest is if the board were choosing to go down that path, you do one or the other. Because if you do a mandate, then any kind of additional increase is a moot point. If the board chooses not to do a mandate, then by all means, there would be ways that you could incentivize those. But you really don't put both of those types of things into effect.
And I'm not proposing that. I mean,
I think
go
that's
back to, I'm
something
not
that the board could consider. Definitely, that would probably give people pause, and maybe help them make a decision that goes in line with what the city wants to do. I hadn't heard that, but other cities or other places are also looking as a way to incentivize people to get the shot by giving them a $100 gift card or giving them a day of vacation. So there are a number of ways to present a policy that encourages more of your populace to get the shot.
Yeah. And so then I have a couple other things. So then I guess the question is with the policy, I haven't, I sort of skimmed Webster Groves a while back, but I haven't looked at it recently. I know some of the, some organizations that have this are doing a testing protocol for employees who are exempt. So is that, I didn't see that here. Is that something, is that something the employees would be responsible for, presenting a negative test once a week, every other week?
Yeah, I did talk to my brother, and he indicated that at Stiefel, they have a testing facility in their first floor, where even if you just say, I'm having a sore throat, I feel some which way, they send you downstairs to go get tested, and until the results come back, they send you home. I don't know what the protocol would be to do that. We certainly, I don't think, I'm looking at Chief Cottrell, we don't have the capability to do that, but we could, and since it's free, we can certainly send people.
Right, although I don't think it's free if you're getting it for.
On a weekly basis?
On a weekly basis, because then they realize you're doing it for work, and then they start charging you.
Then I
So-
don't know.
Yeah, so I don't know how that works with these companies that are doing it.
And that
We can
type
look
of a-
into it if
yeah,
you
that type of
want.
a protocol was not covered in the policy as it was
Yeah.
currently written.
And then I guess my other question is, I have not spoken directly to non-vaccinated employees. I have talked to some higher up at the police department at the York Village meeting yesterday, and I guess I'd like to hear from Chief Cottrell, or maybe not, I don't want to put you on the spot, but, and maybe Chief Spees about if people would feel so strongly that they would walk away from a job. I mean,
I don't know how to directly answer that question or concern. I know I stand by, it is our duty to protect Brentwood at all costs, which means going into someone's home, we have to assure them we're not going to harm them. We know, evidence shows this vaccine makes a difference. Lost time away from work, even though employees may contract COVID that are vaccinated because their children contracted it, they cannot be vaccinated. Their time away from work is reduced. So I am concerned about my two employees. I respect their opinion. I respect them just having personal opinion about it. But I know it's our responsibility to protect Brentwood. So I support this. I want our people to be vaccinated.
great. Thank you very much.
yeah,
Thank you.
You have further comment?
Well, on the side of the police department, unfortunately, we don't have one of their representatives here. I mean, the concern would be that we have a larger percentage of those individuals. Now, I have not spoken to any of the police officers that have not received the vaccine. I've spoken to one of the firefighters that has not. But again, what I have heard from the individuals and the proverbial rumor mill is that most of their reasoning would not fall under the guise that would allow them an exemption. But I would hasten to bet that we would see several that would take the stand and ultimately potentially lose their job over this within the police department. Now, on the fire department side, I can't say that definitively. I think at least one would probably get the vaccine. The other one, I'm not certain.
I would actually, if I could just ask maybe Chief Spees could, if this goes forward, if Chief Spees could address that.
We can bring back his comments. I do know that leading up to this, department directors did have a conversation with those in their department. I know Chief Cottrell mentioned that, to encourage them to get vaccinated. You know, before in City Hall, we didn't have 100% compliance. And since then, we are now 100% because the department directors went back and did speak to those individuals. And I stand with Chief Cottrell as well. I really think when it comes down to it, the individuals we're talking about have long tenure with the city. So on a matter of principle to say I'm going to walk away because of this, that sure would be throwing a lot away. So, and do we want the liability of going into someone's house and then all of a sudden they contract something from us? But, you know, it's a board policy decision, so.
I would say that this is a very easy decision for me. The source and the predominant source of the spread is the unvaccinated. And I believe it will continue to be a comp issue. I think that it will be relatively easy to tie an exposure to, make it work. The employee will be motivated to make it work related. Yeah, I came in contact with a COVID person and that's when I got it. I mean, I think that's a real exposure. It's compelling to me that there's been FDA approval of the Pfizer vaccine. It's my understanding that Moderna is not far away. It's compelling to me that we have baked into this policy protected reasons for where in which an employee may seek an exemption and run the traps on that. I mean, if you have a medical reason or a sincerely held religious belief, then you don't have to get it. But to just, I mean, I don't understand the unvaccinated. I don't. I think, sometimes there's 10 sides to a story. Sometimes there's one. The world's not flat. I think we have an obligation to our citizens to, who may have to involuntarily come in contact with the police and find themselves exposed unknowingly. I mean, I think if parochial schools are requiring it, I think if hospitals are requiring it, I think it's appropriate that we, with a certain type of, protected reasons, having it be baked in, I think this is the right decision. So I would be in favor of moving it forward. I'd be interested to hear from Chief Speece. I don't find that to be a reason to delay it at the committee matter. I mean, if someone's going to walk away from a job on their political beliefs, I think that would be cause to evaluate their character and fitness to hold that job in the first place. I mean, that's how I feel about it. But I guess we can let the chips fall. We'll cross that bridge as far as I'm concerned. If someone really is going to tender their resignation, we'll deal with it as it comes. But I mean, I'm in favor of something like this, and I in fact would be in favor of having a negative testing protocol in place for someone who does qualify for an exemption. I don't know how hard it would be to, again, and I'm not saying that's a reason to delay moving this forward. I think there's an urgency here. And then the deciding factor for me was at the FDA approval of the Pfizer vaccine. I think it was fair to hold back before that happened, but we're past that now. So those are my feelings. Alderman Shelton.
Yeah, so I would agree that I think that this is a good idea and I would support it. And a point of clarification, I think this goes back to Chief Speece being here, but we feel that I guess what concerns me is the amount of employees in the police. And we feel strongly that that's the set. It's not like Bull had mentioned in the administration, once full approval, it kind of increased the numbers, but we kind of feel that that's kind of the number that's going to stay. They're pretty steadfast in that.
I haven't had any revision to these numbers as of yet, but
Okay.
I can definitely try to do that as well. When I spoke with Bola today, I don't think we have had the opportunity to get this on the next board meeting, but it would be on the 20th agenda, which would give us an opportunity theoretically to add that testing protocol portion to the policy, and then also have an opportunity for Chief Speece to speak again, and I can again do yet another poll to see where we're at with regards to our employees. And one thing, just as a side note, one of the questions asked was with regards to the administration of it. I would be the one that would be responsible for it. Initially, it'll be a little bit of getting the information, but with the help of the management team, I don't anticipate it being a huge issue. I think the more difficult piece of it would be for our part-time employees in parks, just because they're a little bit more transient in nature. But aside from that, getting it from the full-time employees, I could probably have most of that done within the next week if I had to do it starting today. I'm not concerned. Most of the folks have that card in their wallet, and we just make a simple copy of it and put it in their medical file, and we're good to go.
Alderwoman Tice.
So I have one last question I failed to ask earlier. Can you explain the rationale for the phasing? I mean, we're not talking about all that many employees. Is it a burdensome issue for you to gather? Like you just said, you could gather the cards really quickly. Is there a reason not to have everybody on that December 1st deadline?
Well, I think, again, it just affords a little bit more opportunity to get the information out and to I think, from a board standpoint, implementing it with our managerial staff first shows that level of importance that the board would put on it to have your management staff be the first to kind of step up to the plate. And I should mention, of our management staff, I think there's maybe only one that is currently unvaccinated.
If I appreciate what Jason said, and he worked with Brian Hay with McMahon Berger to put this together. However, we're talking about a deadly disease.
Yeah.
So I think it is the prerogative of Ways and Means if you direct us to double up the phase so that everybody's, within the same period, I would support that as well.
Alderwoman Tice.
I'd like to make a motion that we move forward the mandatory COVID vaccine procedure to the full Board of Aldermen, and that we eliminate Phase 2 and include all employees in Phase 1, and then direct staff to evaluate whether a testing protocol should be included for exempt employees.
Anyone like to make a second to that motion?
I'll second it.
All right, there's a motion and a second. Any discussion? Alderman Gould?
The issue I have, I think, look, I want this to be successful. I want it to protect us. And, I just went to a funeral of somebody who was fully vaccinated that contracted it. So my concern for this is it's changing still. And the FDA approval was based on the data that was from the original strain. They did not test it against Delta. Delta's changing the game a little bit. Lambda's coming and it's changing the game too. I just think that it's a little hard to tell. Now, hey, if they can come out with a new vaccine and that is then rolled into this, I just think it's a little. I'd like to see it pushed a little bit, but that's just me.
Anyone else? Okay, roll call.
Sorry. Chairwoman Sims,
Yes.
Alderman Gould,
No.
Alderman Shelton,
Yes.
Alderwoman Tice.
Yes.
Motion carries by a vote of 3 to 1.
Okay, thank you. Moving on, item 8B, issuance of a task order for all insurance renewals.
At the last meeting, the committee asked that we contact Charlesworth and ask if they could assist the city in obtaining new quotes for all our insurance coverage with Slate. And in board docs is their response. They indicated that, they reminded me first that the city would have to give notice to Slate that they are looking to remove themselves from the program, and then they would go forward with obtaining quotes for the city, because they would not want to go through the necessary work to get new quotes, and all the insurance providers that would be providing new quotes only at the end of it, for it to be an exercise that the city would use to say, we made a good decision, we're staying with Slate. So they would want to know that the city's intention, regardless, is to leave Slate.
I found that to be an unreasonable response. I mean, I asked you out on a date, not to get married. Like, I frankly, I'm not just because we wanted to get some quotes doesn't mean that doesn't mean I have to send a notice that we're going to withdraw. I mean, and certainly if he's concerned about, like, I felt like you were, when I read that interchange, I felt like you were asking question A, and he created his own question to which he decided to respond. I mean, we want to do a comparison. It doesn't mean we want to withdraw. And if they want to handicap themselves about a 6 month, having that subject to a 6 month change, so be it. But I felt like he didn't read the call of the question. You know, and the idea that we're not able to get any kind of quotes without declaring our intent to we don't know if we want to withdraw.
We don't have to go with them either. I mean, this was, since we already have a relationship with them and know their work, we can issue an RFP.
Is he, I mean, and I would rather have it be clear, because I didn't think it was clear from this email. Is he saying he's refusing to give us to work with us?
Well, I don't think he
Absent our
uses
declared withdrawal?
strong terms like that.
Well, I'd rather make him, you know, distill that down.
I
mean,
can go back and ask him. again.
Unless I don't want to speak. I just, to me, when I read that interchange, I'm like, this is nuts.
Yeah.
We would just like to see, we'd like to see some numbers. That doesn't mean we want to leave.
That's
I
right.
mean, you know, I guess maybe if it's compelling enough, but.
Sure.
But the idea that we have to do that, I mean,
I don't know, I can get clarification. On a happier note, I became board chair of Slate today.
oh, congratulations.
Yeah. I will bring this back to the committee.
I'll echo, I totally agree with what Sunny just said, Alderwoman Sims. And I look forward to Slate's sort of changing. The Slate board has made some really interesting changes, and so I think that has the potential to positively impact Brentwood. And so I am curious to see how that plays out as well. And so I personally don't, I don't want to give notice because that seems, yeah. So, but congratulations on your
Thank you.
thankless job that you just
Yeah.
assumed.
Okay, so you'll come back to us on that
Yes,
one.
I will.
Report back. Okay, so item 8C is the excess insurance liability coverage.
So to the question, does any other city have excess insurance? The response to that is no. And the one quote that she was able to obtain was for $1 million. And the premium, I believe she said, was $200,000. And so she's going back and refreshing it one more time and seeing if we get something different. As of the meeting time today, I hadn't heard a response back from her, so I'd like to bring this back as well.
But great. But just so I understand it, when we went through this before, it was 10,000.
It was.
And now it's
And
200.
I made a motion and nobody seconded it.
Yeah.
I'll wear the egg on my face. I can show my growth. Okay, so just wanted to make sure I read that correctly. So, but it's you'll report back on that one
I'll
as
bring
well.
back, right.
Okay, we're down to item 9, citizen comments. Do we have anyone out in the
We do not.
gallery to comment? Okay, at this point, item 10, entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
All right.
Second.
All right, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All right, we're adjourned. Thank you, everyone.